we actually have a really special treat that I'm excited about with the premiere. Everyone who's featured in the film is here with us today to have a quick panel discussion and talk about some of the issues and some of the themes. And with that, I'm going to get us kicked off with a question for everybody. Um, when we were making the film and came around and asked you all of these questions and we asked you what you expect from the next administration, that was when the primaries were just getting started. And so much has happened between then and now as we're approaching the general election. I'm wondering for all of you, has your answer to that question changed? What do you expect from the next administration? And anyone who has thoughts. Oh, Nicholas, yes, I see you unmuted.
No, I don't. I honestly don't think anything has changed. I think, and I think both candidates, both parties. I still feel that we're overlooked. So I don't think anything will change in 2024.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I certainly can't disagree. I can't disagree. Anyone else? Thoughts as we head into the general election in just a few weeks and early voting is going to be kicking off soon for a lot of you.
Michelle, this is Sarah. I will say that to kind of echo what was just said, I don't know that a lot has changed. I've watched pieces of the presidential debates. I've watched pieces of the vice presidential debates. I still feel very overlooked. Adding to that piece, for me, I work in the digital accessibility field. So my expectations have sort of expanded because we've seen this new rule from the Department of Justice about the accessibility of, government or federally funded web assets. And so my concern is, are we going to be dealing with an administration who may have the ability to repeal that as well? So there's some additional fear for me that has come into play.
Fear is a good word. I think it's a lot of fear and apprehension heading into this election. Absolutely. Other thoughts?
I guess the thought for me is, as a disabled woman, we were trying to have kids when I was injured. We are now trying to have kids again, and they never put the stats for what happens to us with what they're banning. And so who dies? You wait until you're dying. Well, how long do you wait when I don't actually show symptoms? Like, how close do I have to get to dying? So that sucks. I would say that this might be the most stressful election I think I've ever been through. It's also the first election I've been through disabled. So I'd say that is something that it's really disappointing that when you look at stats, there's no disabled women. That's not a group that they track, how we fare in all of this. And that's pretty disappointing.
I think that's real in so many ways. One of the things that really strikes me with all of the issues that come up in the film, these are all core issues in this election, right? We're talking about education and employment and access to health care. These are really basic issues. All Americans are thinking about these issues. All the candidates are talking about these issues. But I think what you're pointing out is true, that we miss the disability of it all. Those are also at their core really specific disability issues that impact our community in such specific ways and in ways that are very real and meaningful, and that often hold us back as a community when they're not handled well. And that's what to me is kind of, it's not that those issues aren't being addressed in the election, it's that they're not addressing us and how those issues impact us. Actually, that leads me, I'm so sorry, Nicholas, I'm going to pick on you again because that leads me into the next question I had in mind is, given your background in politics, I'm wondering if you have some thoughts for us on how we can get the attention of politicians. How can we get them to talk to us and about us?
I think the first thing I want to say is actually back on the former question. Actually, this kind of answers both questions. But in Massachusetts, where I'm from, the governor and even smaller state offices, some local offices, even some federal offices have town halls dedicated to disability rights, which I think is amazing. But it's definitely not something we see on a federal level, and advocating for things like that might be the way to get federal politicians to notice us and consider us more.
Those are great points. We touched on this a little bit in the film as well, and I'm wondering if you all can talk about, especially if maybe some of you could have voted already. I live in Virginia, we're already voting. Have you experienced barriers in casting your ballot? Or hopefully, have any of you experienced fewer barriers in casting your ballot? We saw a lot of great changes made in 2020 around how we run our elections. Not really for us. It might have been because of a global pandemic, but we saw some great changes made, and I'm wondering if that impacted your experience at all. If you found it easier to cast a ballot in the last couple elections.
Well, I mean, again, I think we en masse we receive ballots by mail, which I think are pretty successful. That has been a successful program. But I could say that I do go to the polling places quite often. I've noticed that the booths and the software to use for people with disability often doesn't work. There's often poll workers at these places who know how to troubleshoot these the problems with these devices, and that makes it incredibly difficult. So if you don't go with the PCA or someone who you trust with going into the voting booth with you, it's difficult.
Yeah, I would say for me, actually, when we did the documentary and we just went the other day to do a local vote, both times, like I'm independent. I don't need anyone to help me. But the polling places make it so you almost have to have someone, because finding accessible parking, so there's a difference between walking disabled and non-walking disabled. I can't stand, I can't walk. So if there's no hash lines for me to get out of the car, I'm not getting out. It's just not going to happen. And they had loads of just close handicap parking, but I think out of all the handicap parking, they only had 2 that had hash lines. So both times I had a very hard time finding parking. And I mean, I have less time in a day, I just do. So that, when you run out of time, like if I'm seeing patients, like I can't just be like, all right, I know you need that root canal before the weekend, but I'm just going to get up and leave because I need X amount of time before the polling site closed. The other thing is how cold it is. I know when we were voting back in February when we did this, it was so cold. Like some of the times I've had to vote, the lines are so long. And it's really hard to like bundle up with blankets in a manual chair. It gets in your wheels, like how much do I have to bundle up? Like I don't know, like how long am I going to be out there? That to me, that's pretty frustrating. Like okay, I can wait, like if you need me to wait, but like just is there not a way that you could put me somewhere that's heated? Like just okay, this is where you got in line. Make me wait. Sure, okay. As long as you have an accessible bathroom that I can go use if like I desperately need to go, because I'm sure other people, your bathroom needs are going to be different. Like I have to go when I have to go and I'm going right now. So it would be nice if they had people that were trained that when things go awry, you don't just get shut out of voting because you're too cold, you can't get a bathroom, basic things that really shouldn't be so hard.
Absolutely.
This is LaQuanda Clark. I would say that I want to answer all three questions if I could. With the first one, my opinion has not changed whatsoever. It's more so now, with all the hurricanes we've had, people with disabilities in these communities, and voting is coming up soon. Are they going to be able to access that? What are the plans? What's being done to help? I'm in South Carolina, and we were impacted by Helene, but not that bad. But some of the places that were we do serve, and my my ET was the one that was boots on the ground, delivering food and water and things to people who needed it. Um, you could call, the agencies that should be doing it, but they would just send them to us. And so we are people with disabilities going out helping with people with disabilities. And it was a lot. It's still going on. Um, but it does create concern for me. The voting time does come around. It's going to be a huge issue just because of accessibility. And for me, when I do go vote, most of the time, the only issue I really face is that when you go to the curbside voting, nobody really comes out like they're supposed to. They're supposed to come out every 15 minutes. You can sit there for 30 minutes and 40 minutes. Nobody really comes out. And so my husband had to end up getting out the car and going back in after he just finished voting to say, hey, you're not watching curbside voting. And because of my job of what I do, I like to test them out. So I'll try different ways of voting. Sometimes I'll do curbside. Sometimes I'll go inside and do the voting and just to see how accessible it is inside. And I feel like sometimes they're not as changed as they could be. And so they try to do too much. Like, I don't need your help. I can do this independently. I don't need you over my shoulder, helping me do, feed the machine. I will ask you if I need that help. So either they do too much or they don't do anything at all. There's no middle back, no middle ground in there.
There's this, I gotta say, I know for a fact there are some folks in our audience today who actually work for NDRN's network of disability rights organizations all over the country. And I promise you, they are taking notes right now. This is the kind of stuff we need to hear from voters on the ground. We need to know what your experiences are if we want to advocate to break down some of those barriers. But LaQuanda, I'm glad you snuck in there because I've actually been wanting to ask you a question as well. Before I came to NDRN, I worked for an independent living center. So that is actually really, really near and dear to my heart. And I know that you're involved with the independent living movement. I was wondering, how do you feel our community can get better organized to be more involved in politics?
And this is so corny again. I feel like we need to speak up. I feel like sometimes we've had a trauma of not being heard or seen. And so we give up too easily and we don't speak up when we need to. I'm guilty of it too, you know, but I feel like we need to push past that. We need to speak up. We need to be the first ones at the front. If need be, we need to advocate for each other. We need to help each other. I often see divide in the disability community as well. And I would really love to see that divide kind of like evaporate because we all need each other. Um, and I feel like if we came together better, we would have a louder voice than we do right now. Um, Maybe we need to climb up some steps, throw the crutches and the wheelchairs aside. Let's climb up some steps, do what we got to do. And I feel like we're not doing that right now. And I think that's the problem.
Yeah, we say that all the time. We have that photograph of advocates getting out of their wheelchairs and climbing up the steps of the United States Capitol on their hands in the fight for the ADA framed in our office at NDRN. And we talk about it all the time, what a moment that was in the history of disability rights when we really were very much all of us together in the fight for this bill. Of course, I mean, it's a landmark piece of civil rights legislation, but it was all of us together, and that we have to somehow tap back into that again, I think, because the circumstances are no less dire. That was amazing. Thank you. And I agree. Sometimes we lose heart a little too quickly. We gotta have that grit again, and keep fighting. Thank you. That was amazing. We also see all your questions and comments coming in the chat. Please keep it coming. We're gonna try to work those questions in. We also appreciate everybody's fire around this election. You guys seem really charged up to vote, which is amazing. We may not get to some of them that are a little more politically charged, shall I say. NDRN is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that does not support or oppose any candidates for public office. You all can, of course, as individual voters, and we appreciate that fire that you're bringing to the election this year. We need every person with a disability to be as excited and charged up and paying attention as you guys are. I wanted to turn for a second, if I could, to Keisha and Sarah. I wanted to know if you all had anything that you would say to younger voters with disabilities. There's such a
Sure.
between
So this is
younger
Sarah.
voters. Yeah, go
Um,
ahead.
I, I mentioned in the film that I had not voted until 2020. And, that I had kind of taken a very hands-off approach to politics. And what ultimately inspired me to vote without being as nonpartisan as I can was the presence of a lot of hate in 2020 in the election. And so, what I will say to younger voters, having grown up as a person with a disability in rural South Carolina, there are people who told me a lot to vote with your head and not with your heart, or vote for what's best for the country, not what your heart says. Well, I don't feel that those things have to be mutually exclusive. And so we as people with disabilities, we have a lot of heart. We have a lot of fire. And our emotions are tied up a lot with what I would kind of jestingly call our mind thoughts. And so don't don't let people tell you that your emotions and your fire aren't valid reasons for you to vote the way that that fire inside of you wants you to vote. Because at the end of the day, hate and a successful economy doesn't make a good country.
Michelle, you're on mute.
I was saying, Keisha, did I see you come off mute for a second there?
Yes. I would love to respond to that question. I would say for the younger voters out there today that have a disability is, your voice does matter. Because, I may hear that sometimes where some younger voters with disabilities are like, well, it doesn't matter. They're not going to cater to me, which is kind of what this whole movie is about. And yes, I know it may seem like they don't, but the more of us come together, like LaQuanda said, maybe we do need to start climbing up the stairs and things like that. But yes, your voice matters. And please still go out there and vote. And if you're having trouble like trying to figure it out, maybe, lay out the president's on a piece of paper and lay down your pros and cons and say, hey, what do I want? What is this person advocating for? But I think the more of us come together in the disability community, our voices will be heard, and it needs to be heard, and it definitely will be. Mark my words. But, still go out there and do it. And, don't just assume that it's not going to matter, because we all need to come together if we're going to make a change. So still go out there and vote regardless of what.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. We talk about that a lot at NDRN because for a lot of us, our jobs are calling out the barriers to voting so that we can get them changed, right? We have to call them out if we expect to break them down. But we always have this fear in the back of our minds that people with disabilities are hearing that and they're thinking, there's a bunch of barriers to voting. That sounds kind of hard. And maybe I'll sit this one out. And that is the worst possible outcome, right? There shouldn't be barriers. You shouldn't have to, do your research in advance and prepare to advocate for yourself and have to get over those barriers. You shouldn't have to. It's not fair that it's that way. We're trying to change that. But the worst thing you could do is forfeit your vote in the face of all that. The worst thing you could do is not have your voice heard, not show our elected officials the power of our vote, because we're a huge community, right? 1 in 4 Americans Americans are a person with a disability. That is a huge group of people that has so much potential power. And when we turn it into a vote, we turn it into actual power. And I would hate to think that there are folks who are willing to sit this one out when the stakes are so high. I wanted to turn a little bit. I was thinking about, we keep referencing like that fight for the ADA, right? And some of that old school disability rights fire. And so if I can, I wanted to turn to you, Jim, because I was just struck by the amount of history that you have with this community and the wealth of knowledge that you are. And I wanted to ask you, over your lifetime, how has the dynamic of the disability community and politicians and politics changed? Well, I guess I should ask first, has it changed? And if so, what has changed? What have you seen?
Uh, it has changed a little bit. It has changed a little bit. I can finally get to the polls. I can finally get to the polls. The bus I voted. I voted in the ever. The first time I voted in my parents' car. Because I could not access the voting booth. Because I could not access the voting booth. But the only way that let me do that. But the only way they let me do that is I agreed to let it watch. If I agreed to let people watch me. To vote. Voting. In the car. In the car. I agreed to do it. I agreed to do it. Simply as I knew the vote count. Just because I knew my vote counted. And I was asking people about. And I was educating the people around me. The people, the oneself, and the ability to vote. The people like myself have the ability to vote. With the knowledge. With the knowledge. And the to provide better access. And they need to provide better access. This was that is 81. This was in 1980. Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know the answer to all of the questions. I don't know if I answered all of your questions.
That was fantastic, and actually, you kind of got me thinking. And if I can ask you a follow up, what do you think needs to change going forward? What change has been missing in terms of that dynamic between the disability community and the political sphere?
We need another word. Disability to run. We need candidates with disabilities to run. We had only one assistant with the disability. We had only one president with a disability. One disability has a voice and a microphone. Fortunately, he had a voice and a microphone. Has is well. If we had any cameras at that time, in the bus, in the wheelchair, and he was in a wheelchair. I don't know if people would vote for him. I don't know if people would have voted for him. But because Mike. But because he had only a mic. He had a long voice. He had a strong voice. The convince the American people. So he convinced the American people that he could do the job. That he could do the job. And might have been it again. Well, I don't know. And we might be having an idiot again. So we need to vote. So we need to vote. Our lives. Our lives on it. Our lives rely on it. My friend just thought. My friend just enjoyed. The father of the ADA. The father of the ADA. Made that quote. Quote like your life on it. Vote like your life depends on it, because it does. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so glad we had this conversation, because when I asked you what change is missing, what needs to happen next, I did not know you were going to say people with disabilities need to run for office. That's amazing. Not just that we need to vote, but we need to run for office as well. That's incredible.
Only boy. That's the only way anything will change.
You're right. I mean, there's like two ways to try to do this, right? We can, as people with disabilities, vote and beg non-disabled people that run for office to think about us and speak about us and speak to us, or we could run for office and speak for our community. I love that. Yeah, that's amazing. I hope folks who are on with us today are inspired by that and are going to go run for office. I probably shouldn't say this, but I tell Monica Wiley all the time that she should run for office as an up and coming leader in the disability community. If I can, I mean, Keisha looks like she's in favor of that, actually. I saw that response.
No, I am in favor of that. I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, I felt like we met for a reason, like when we came into each other's lives, and just seeing like so much she does online definitely motivates and inspires me. And I'm like, oh yeah, sometimes I like was looking for her on my mail-in ballot of, so I can vote. But no, I agree with you, Michelle. And yeah, I think we can make that happen. I'm there for it.
I love it. Supporting each other. I love it. That's amazing. If I can turn to actually Carolyn and Sarah for a minute, I'm wondering if you have messages for, I was just really struck by your stories of, voting as disabled for the first time, or voting for the first time after having not engaged for a long time. And I'm wondering if you all have a message for people with disabilities who are not feeling fired up and enthusiastic about voting. And what would you tell them? That's a tough one, I know. I can see you thinking.
I think people don't realize how close some races really can be. I think, and that just comes down to, I think, how information is being shared. Some of these races are really that tight. And so if it is, you bring a couple of your friends, because the reality is, I think the thing that was the hardest is you really don't understand what it's like to be disabled if you're not disabled. Because I had patients that were disabled and I would help them however I could, but there wasn't a good place to go to learn how to help disabled people, because whatever you want, I will do. And I think that's part of the issue, is people don't know. So, people that are around me, I will post what's happening. And so they understand. And if I explain why I want something to be voted a certain way, they'll vote that way. But I think your point earlier, I feel like to get the younger voters, I think the thing, if you watch that documentary about how they got the ADA passed, the reason they were able to do it was because there was that media strike, and they were just getting that information to people and they had nothing else to watch. So I think the good thing is that you have apps like TikTok, I know that's controversial for some people, but it does get attention. And I think if you can find a way to get these messages in a very entertaining, funny way, I think humor is a great way of relaying, like, our basic struggles. And I don't think what we're asking is so crazy. I don't think that anyone, if they actually understood what we were asking, they wouldn't be like, oh, wow, that's too much to ask. Like, how dare you want to vote? How dare you want to be able to go to the bathroom? Like, I cannot believe that. I don't think people would think that. I think really it just comes to reaching the people to help them understand. And I think the other thing, he's right. I think the only way to really make things accessible is to be a part of the decision. And I think there's a woman, I forget her name, but she said disabled people should be everywhere where decisions are being made about us. So they shouldn't legislate about us without us, I think is her saying, which I think is very true, because I don't think you can really understand it. Like, I know we were renovating our house. We told the architect it needs to be accessible. My husband walked in, said, yep, this is great. I rolled in and I said, okay, well, I mean, I can't really see out the windows. Like, that's a little bit of a bummer. Like, if you're not sitting in my chair looking at the things that I'm looking at, or like they'll put the trash cans right to the left of the door when I need to open it. And, I could open the door, but if you put the trash can there, I can't open it. And so I think that's the biggest thing, is voting. Yes, that's the bare minimum. Getting people there, getting people to understand the importance, but also getting people into those positions, or at least if they're not willing to, run, have them have to consult, like, in order to do new projects. Because what's super frustrating for me is when you see new buildings being built and I know they're not accessible. And I'm sure for vision impaired people, that is really frustrating for me. I feel like that has got to be one of the more frustrating things when I see things. And I am one of those feisty people that I ruin my day trying to force people to make it accessible. I will go pick a fight if I see something that I know is wrong. Like, I will go push the handicap button to open the door. I don't need it, but I will go push it. And if it doesn't work, I'm going to go roll on over to the desk and I'm going to go complain. I'll go talk to the state reps too and be like, this is really unacceptable. What if there's a day I do need that? And what if, the people with their kids, they need that button. Like, that button needs to be working. It doesn't matter you put it there if it doesn't work. So I think it would be really awesome to be able to gather all of these great advocates together and make some sort of social media, some sort of movie, something that people could engage with, to get that message across.
I love it. Actually, the way people were lighting up and nodding when you were saying I will take time out of my day to go and give you trouble if it's not accessible was amazing. And I do the same thing. My disability doesn't prevent me from being able to hand mark a paper ballot when I go to vote, but you best believe when I go to vote, I ask them to use the touchscreen machine to mark my ballot. First of all, I just think it's easier. I don't want to have anxiety that I filled in the bubble wrong. I just want to touch the button. But also, if you haven't heard it from anyone else before I came in, you're going to hear it from me that the machine better be set up and ready to use. So I love it. I think what I hear also from what you're saying as well as from Jim's remarks is like we have to take the issues that matter and help show people how voting and those issues are intertwined and how much voting impacts your actual regular life, because I don't know that folks always see that. But then we got to take it to where the people are at, right? Take it to TikTok, take it to social media, take it to entertainment, find people where they're at and give them that message. I love it. And Jack and Monica, I'm not ignoring you all. Actually, I do have a couple questions for you. I've got a little more time. Jack, I wanted to ask you, can you talk about why you feel this project is important? Why it was an important one for you to make?
Well, I think I want to go back to something that several of our panelists said at the beginning when you asked them if they felt, months after we filmed, if things had changed, and several folks said no, that they felt that the candidates are still not doing enough to address the disability community. And I think back to I believe it was Sarah mentioned watching the debates, and I know that our friends and colleagues across the disability community wrote to the news networks who were moderating the debates and asked, can you include a question about disability? We are one of, if not the largest group in America. 1 in 4 people in this country, and more than 1 in 4, 27% of people, I believe, in this country is a person with a disability. We are a huge voting bloc, but we don't get treated like that. We do not have, if I said to a candidate when I was doing political work, 1 in 4 voters in this district falls in this group, it would be sort of unthinkable that they wouldn't try to do some outreach. But, that's been by and large the reality. I mean, there are, of course, exceptions, but we're just not seeing enough. We don't see enough from the candidates. We don't see enough from the media when they talk to the candidates about what they're going to do if they are elected. So because we don't get our questions out there when those debates, those interviews happen, this project was our chance to say, hey, here's what we'd like you to focus on. Here are some things. Get to know, to echo something LaQuanda said at the end of the film, get to know us, get to know what our lives are like. We can educate you, but only if they're willing to listen. So this project was, a message in part to the candidates. Please just take the chance to listen to us.
I love it. And one of the things that was really powerful, probably one of the more powerful moments for me in the film. So my favorite moment in the film was when Keisha says she has her shows to watch and that matters. That hit home for me. Like, that is real. We are people and all those things matter. Yes, I have my business to run, but I also want to watch my shows. That was a laugh out loud moment for me. One of the really powerful moments for me in the film, Monica, was seeing you in front of the White House when you were talking about what you want from the next administration. And the White House is not some palace that exists in some magical realm that is separate from all of us. The way it sometimes seems like it is on TV, it is by the people for the people. And it's something that should feel really real and really connected for us. But it was also really fun to watch you go out on the road and really connect with everyone that's featured in the film. And so I'm wondering, what did you learn from your time just making this film, traveling around, talking to all types of different voters?
Michelle, thank you for the question. And you're right, it is seen to some people, the White House, as just this big palace, and it's so magical and just so lovely. And while it is lovely, it definitely has a lot of work that they are focusing on that they need to do. I would say what I have learned from traveling on the road and speaking with each of the individuals that served as that were in the documentary and that are panelists here today is that each of them come to this story, this production, this sort of advocacy with a different set of lens. The common denominator is disability, but the lens of our disability and how we live with that disability, it's all different. For instance, I'm going to use Dr. Caroline Adams, who has a spinal cord injury. I too have a spinal cord injury. I have an incomplete spinal cord injury. And while Dr. Adams uses a wheelchair, I walk with a cane, but I also use a scooter for long distance walking. And so our abilities within our disabilities is different, but the common denominator is that we still continue to experience these challenges and barriers to voting. And that's why I'm a big proponent of curbside voting. I am not going to go there with that. I know, it has its advantages and disadvantages, but I am a huge proponent of curbside voting for the issues that Dr. Caroline Adams mentioned when we were watching her go and cast her votes. But each and every individual that I spoke with, that I had the great opportunity to talk to interview, comes to this with their own set of challenges that I may not even be able to understand and experience. For instance, Sarah is a lovely individual. Shout out to Sarah because she loves fashion like myself and Keisha. So we connected automatically. She had on some Pandora charms. I was like, I had on my Pandora charms, although I had to take them off because Jack said so because they would interfere with the filming. But I'm going to leave that alone. Anyway, Sarah is an individual who is blind and requires accessibility for digital access and access to everything that requires some digital needs. I don't understand that particular piece because I don't have that challenge. But again, the common denominator is that we have this disability and that it is a barrier. And anything that is a barrier to our rights, to our way of living, to our ability to be able to live the quality of life that we deserve and that we should have is a problem. And it should be discussed, and that every elected official, whether you are an incumbent or whether you are running for election as a first-time candidate, should recognize that these challenges exist and that we also live in the communities in which you're trying to represent. So make sure that you are also creating a table and a pipeline for us to be a part of the work that you are doing, because you cannot effectively advocate for us without us and being a part of the work that needs to be done. And I'm sorry I'm getting into my whole spiel and soapbox, so I may have veered off the question just a little bit, Michelle, but you know what? You're my boss and you know how I do.
You can't say it better than that. We can't say it better than that. That was Monica is known for bringing the passion and the fire. She brought it today. Now that was, I think, actually a fantastic way to sort of summarize this panel. And I know we're getting close on time. I'm about to pass it back to Jack for some closing remarks. Before I do that, if I can just take advantage of my privilege as MC for one moment to say thank you to everyone who joined us today. We see you keeping the chat lit, and we appreciate it. You guys are engaged and you're thinking about these things and you are passionate and fiery, just like Monica, and we love it. Keep it coming. And thank you so much to everyone who agreed to be a part of this film and on this panel today. Your stories are just incredible, and your passion, your perseverance is amazing. And this is why we do the work that we do, right? It's for our community. It's about us. And we're honored that we get to do this work with you all. So thank you for being willing to just share your stories with us. With that, I am going to pass it back to you, Jack. And can I say, a bunch of people in the chat did ask how they can watch the film and how they can have screenings of the film in their communities. So if you don't mind touching on that in your closing remarks, we'd appreciate it.
Absolutely. And I think, with apologies to our team, we might run over slightly because I think we have one last question we're going to get to for our fantastic panelists. But before we do that, I wanted to just highlight a few things that were said in the chat. One of which is that Sarah noted, I apologize, Sarah, I'm trying to find the comment, but so I'm summarizing a little. I'm sorry, we had a lot of things said in the chat, but that she felt that one thing that happens for blind voters is that, you know, one of the challenges is that a lot of the information about where the candidates stand isn't accessible. It's not out there. It's that, you know, a lot of their websites aren't accessible. A lot of, I believe, and Sarah, if you're there, please correct me if I'm misquoting you, that, you know, a lot of the social media is not accessible. So it is a challenge to be able to learn more about where the candidates stand. And again, I apologize if I misquoted that a little. Another thing that got asked was what to do if your polling place is not accessible. Thankfully, we on election day, there's the election protection hotline. That is 866-R-VOTE. That is 866-R-VOTE. There are experts around the country, including our very own Michelle Bishop, who are monitoring that and responding. It is, you know, our rights are non-negotiable. The polling place needs to be accessible, and these folks will make sure that if there is a accessibility issue at your polling place on election day, that it is addressed then and there. Because, you know, there are no do-overs on election day. Another thing that got asked, just to give folks, Janessa already said it, you can also contact your protection and advocacy agency. We have some great folks here from the P&A network, and you can find your P&A by going to our website. We have a list of every state's protection and advocacy agency. They are federally mandated. There is one in every state, every U.S. territory, as well as the District of Columbia, and one targeted towards the Native American community based out of the Four Corners region.
And Jack, I dropped the link in the chat for where they can find our organization in their state as well, right above Janessa's comments. So you've got it there.
Yeah, and we got a couple of questions about sort of how our panelists ended up getting involved and how we chose who was involved in this. And I have to say, everyone involved connected with us. We put out an open call for people to participate in this documentary, and I am so grateful that Jim, LaQuanda, Nicholas, Carolyn, Keisha, and Sarah all answered that open call and invited us into their homes and gave us the chance to speak with them. There are also a few additional interviews that are going to be published with other folks who we interviewed for this project. We would have loved to include even more perspectives, but the reality of making it a short film that was doable within the constraints of a smaller nonprofit whose entire editing team was, me. That sort of
right edge. I'm trying to turn off this Zoom.
Meant there were some practical considerations, but I'm also very grateful to those folks, and we are going to be publishing those interviews. Lastly, we got a few asks about how to watch this again, how to share it, how to do a screening. And the simple answer is
off. No, that's okay.
Tomorrow or so, we'll be sending an email to everyone who registered this, as well as this panel will be going up on YouTube. You're free to reach out to me at jack.rosen@ndrn.org about organizing a screening. But I believe it's going to be publicly available on YouTube. So, you know, we would encourage and love it if you can share this with your network, share this with folks in the community, and share it with the folks who are asking for our votes this November. With that, I know we're a little over on time, so I was hoping each of our panelists might be willing to give a brief answer to this last question. Despite the barriers, despite the challenges we talked about, despite sometimes the lack of engagement from those seeking our votes, everyone here is a voter. So what motivates you to get out there and vote?
Hi, Keisha. Oh, I can go.
Yep.
Hi, Keisha here. I would say for me is, again, going back to that, our voices need to be heard. So until that happens, it's like they're not going to listen. So I would say just like, because your voice matters. So that definitely motivates me and encourages me to want to go out there and vote, because I have a lot to say. And it's not going to happen if I don't go out there and vote. So it's so important. We have to come together as a community, because if we don't, it's not going to happen. No changes are going to be made.
All right, Jim, I saw you came off mute.
I want control over my life.
I want control over my life.
And for people that cannot speak,
And for people that cannot speak,
we need to constantly advocate
we need to constantly advocate
for them as well.
for them as well.
Jack, this is Sarah. I think there's an expression that we hear a lot about being the squeaky wheel and just kind of keeping on, and keeping on, with what we're doing until we get the result we want. And if we don't continue to show up, if we don't continue to go out and vote, or to, interface with elected officials like some of the consumer organizations that I'm part of do, we're going to continue to see candidates who ignore us. But if we continue to show up, if we continue to be the fiery, passionate people that many of us with disabilities are, the hope is eventually that somebody running for office is going to stand up and take notice. But we can't even begin to guarantee that if we don't show up.
This is LaQuanda Clark. For me, yes, this is my country. This is my community. You know, I live here. I want to live in a place that's decent, raise my children in a place that's decent. I want the place to be better for them than it was for me as they get older and the generations after them, you know. I just want people to be happy and, you know, have the things they need to want, regardless of disability or not. You know, this is our country. We should take pride in it. And we may not always agree with the way things are done, and the way to fix that is to go out and vote. You can't make changes if you don't vote. You know, the ADA was created because we got out there, we made a mistake, and we voted. You know, if you don't use your voice, nobody's gonna speak up for you. You have to do it. And the best way to do that is to go to that poll and vote. Vote for the people who have the most benefits for our community, who want to do better for our community, and who see us, you know, who sees our community, and not the ones that, you know, ignore us and don't hear what we have to say. And so if there's a candidate that hears my voice and recognizes that these are issues that need to be fixed, hey, I'm gonna get out there and vote for you.
I think voting voting is important and getting out there and voting, especially if you can be there in person. That's important. I think it's important to have that data, that empirical data for candidates to look at and see that we're out there voting in general, voting for a certain candidate as well. That's important to be seen. But I think beyond that, it's doubly as important to be seen at state houses, be seen at events, go to events, go and advocate. Our voting only means so much, and I believe that's unfortunate, but that's true. I think we see a lot of candidates, and I see it in this election, and I also read that in the comments that one of the candidates, or one of the vice presidential candidates, does have a child with a disability. And while we should see that as kind of a win for our community, I don't know if that's necessarily the case, having a parent, just simply providing lip service. And truthfully, I'm probably going to vote for that candidate. More than likely going to vote for that candidate, but that's simply all I really see it as, lip service. And I think it's doubly as important to actually get out there, advocate, go to the state houses, go to events, find a way to speak about the PCA program, to speak about mental health, to speak about ADA accessibility, to speak about all these significant rights rather than just simply getting out the vote.
So I know people around me don't enjoy politics. And I think from when I was working, I don't think I enjoyed staying involved with politics. And I think there's a misconception that staying up to date with politics is somehow enjoyable, that's going to be stress-free, and it's going to be this lovely, entertaining experience like Netflix or your favorite show. And that's simply not the case. I think it's important to vote for the candidate who might listen to you, because I think voting, imagine, I like it, it's the analogy of, imagine you went to a restaurant and you could place your order, or you could just get delivered anything on the menu. You might be allergic to that food, but imagine not placing that order. That is what not voting is. You're going to the restaurant and you might get something that you're going to have anaphylactic shock and it might kill you. I mean, and you think about how little time it takes to go to the poll and cast your vote, but imagine the massive effect. Like, will you get the supplies you need for like basic daily tasks, like going to the bathroom? Will you be able to go to work now because they've now put barriers that, you want to get your driver's license again? Well, now you can't. So for how little time compared to how much of an effect it's going to have, I think people don't really think that through. Like, yeah, it's inconvenient. Yeah, it's uncomfortable, like listening to politics. You don't have to tell anyone your vote. It is private. So I think that's something, I don't know, that is missed. It is so important. And wouldn't you rather have a say? Like, even if you hate both candidates, what one do you hate less? Like, who's going to listen to you? That's all. At the end of the day, who do you think is going to listen to you when you make your comment about a policy that's going through Congress?
Thank you so much to all of our panelists. Jack, take us home.
Absolutely. And I want to just very briefly highlight one last comment, because I think it really struck the importance of how much your vote counts. Janessa pointed out in the comments that the chair of the Senate Committee on Disabilities in New York State, the chair of that committee was elected by a 10-vote margin to their seat. So if you ever wonder, does your vote count and can it affect who's making decisions about our community? The answer is absolutely yes. It can and it does. So please get out there this November and vote. Thank you all again so much for joining us today. Thank you all to the brilliant Monica Wiley, Michelle Bishop, our panelists, LaQuanda, Nicholas, James, Keisha, Sarah, and Carolyn. Thank you all so much. We couldn't have made this project possible without all of you. And we'll be following up tomorrow with the release of the film and a recording of this panel and some information about how you can do screenings. So thank you all so much. And if our panelists and production team wouldn't mind staying on for a second after this. And also thank you to our ASL interpreters, our captioners, and to Charles Nador, our producer, who made stay very late today for this. Thank you a lot,
Yes.
Charles. I owe you one.
Yes.